Hey guys, welcome to Two Guys in Hockey Talk. I forgot all about our opening 1 minute time count for you guys. So, just so you know, we're back here today with a hockey octagon for hockey supremacy knowledge. We're going to see what a bunch of our guests have here today. We have 4 guys scheduled. 3 are in the waiting room to come out onto the show. 1 is still not here, and we're going to call him out. Jim, Rangers fan, Jim. Where are you? Get on the show if you're watching. All right, buddy. Well,
how you doing, Evan?
How you doing? So I'm Evan, Rev Reynolds, and my pal here is
Favel, the cat insider, because I know nothing about hockey, because like a cat, I just kind of meander around. But I'm doing good. Welcome to Season 4, Episode 4. Even though we're veterans of the podcast, we still have hiccups because, you know, we're learning as we go. But we're excited to have a lively discussion of the upcoming season. Evan, what's been going on in your world?
Well, not too much. They just came out. I saw with the most handsome. You saw that? The most handsome coaches. I just want to say back in the day, back in 2008, when I started with one of our guests on Oilers Jambalaya, blogging for him, I was rated the most handsome blogger on the blogosphere. Honestly. A guy named Evan Reynolds was named the most handsome. When my wife heard about it, she says, "Is there another Evan Reynolds?"
Yeah, I was gonna say, was it a blind study test?
Hey, really quick here before we get into our show, Toronto. I meant to talk about this last week. We had so much going on, but Toronto last week, very specifically, I went through their list. 15 of their players came in at a heavier weight. They have been going on about this. Now, I wanted to say they came in fatter, but I don't think that would be fair if they're putting on muscle. But 12 pounds over the summer, Mitch Marner, you think that that's actually muscle, or is this guy on roids?
No, I think it would be mostly muscle. I'm sure they find personal trainers. Hockey is so specialized now that they find trainers to bulk up and maybe get meaner, because that's what wins in the playoffs. You need to be bigger, meaner, stronger. You got to be able to outplay your opponent in the playoffs. So I think that's what they're bringing in, size, and size can be intimidating, you know, and
True.
So I applaud Mitch Marner. Now, will that impede his speed? That's yet to be seen. So I'm excited to see what they bring.
Well, hey, why don't we go ahead and get into our guests? I'm going to bring them on one by one, and you can introduce our guests here today. Guys, I just want to mention you can follow us on Two Guys on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook. You can follow me on Twitter at Rev and Ev and at Hockey Talk, my partner here, Favel the Cat. So follow Rev and the Cat. Maybe that's going to be a new sideshow we're going to come up with. Rev and the Cat. All right, let's bring our first guest in. This is the guy who brought me into the hockey world. I want to say thank you. Go ahead and introduce our first guest.
This is Brent Huska. Brent, how you doing?
Good. Hey, thanks for having me on, guys. Good to see you guys again.
So I don't know if you caught the beginning of the show, Brent. I just said back in 2008 when I started writing for Oilers Jambalaya, I let everyone know that I was voted the most handsome in the blogosphere. And so I told my wife, and she says, "Is there a different Evan Reynolds out there?"
Yeah, there probably was. No, I'm kidding. You're a handsome looking dude, man. Let me tell you.
All right. Well, why don't we bring our next guest and introduce them to the show? They've been on once before. They've canceled twice, but now they're back for their second time around. Go ahead and introduce our second guest.
Welcome to the greatest goaltender that ever wore the pads for the Edmonton Oilers, Mike Smith. No, I'm kidding. Mike, welcome back. How you doing?
Hey, boys. Thanks for having me on. Good to be here.
It's great to have you back. If you guys recall, in season 1, we had Mike on the show doing some analytics, which was very insightful about kind of prospects and being able to compete for the Stanley Cup. It was a pretty cool study. Did you ever get it published?
Yeah, it got published, and it has a little bit of legs, and I've updated it, so it'd be fun to kick it around on the show again soon.
Well, the good news is we can kick it around the show because we now have the ability on our live show. So, all right. Well, why don't we bring our third guest here tonight? This is a gentleman who needs no introduction, but I will still let you give the introduction here, Pavel.
This is the famous beard that we always talk about in the group chat. Jordan, he's the biggest fan you'll ever meet, and he's been to quite a few stadiums watching hockey. Jordan, how you doing?
Good. How are you guys?
We're doing good. He's waiting to start up his own Pink Whitney brand. He just hasn't shared it with anybody, or maybe it's just moonshine.
Might be.
So right now we're gonna call out Jim, the Ranger fan. He has not showed up, so we're calling you out, buddy. You are in the penalty sin bin right now. You have held us up on Two Guys in Hockey Talk. We ain't bringing you on if you don't get on soon. So we might have to make a slight adjustment into our discussions. So I might ask Favel for some extra information, but remember, he knows absolutely nothing about hockey.
Zero.
All right, well, why don't we open the show with round one here at the Hockey Octagon. Guys, when you get your question, you're going to have 3 minutes to discuss that question. Tell us what your thoughts are all around that subject.
All right, Jordan, you're the first one up. Will the goaltending tandem of Alexander Georgiev, who was traded from the Rangers to the Colorado Avalanche, and Pavel Francois, the best name in hockey, at least the first one is, are they a good enough tandem to help Colorado repeat the Stanley Cup next year in the upcoming season?
I don't know if repeat, but I do think they'll still be in the Final Four. I still think they have a really good team. They have really good pieces there. Not too much is going to get changed because they got through with mediocre goaltending last season, right? So my thoughts on, I'll start with Georgiev, is he was a sub 900 percentage goalie last season. So that is a really scary number. And that is a guy that you brought in to potentially be your starter, if not backup. Those are backup numbers, but as a starter, that's kind of a scary number. He was the backup to the Vezina winner, best goalie in the NHL last season. So, I mean, obviously, maybe he just didn't get the right starts, got put into tough scenarios. Maybe that's why, but I still don't like that number regardless. I've seen better backup numbers with Francois or Francouz. I don't know how you pronounce his name. The big thing on him was he played 57 games in the NHL so far. So that's not a lot, and that's a lot of pressure on a guy that maybe is going to be your starter goalie. And even if he's your backup, that's still not a lot, right? But he did have good numbers. The problem I have with him, this is, I guess, 2 problems, is he did play in the minors a little bit last season as well. So you're also saying that you're going to have this goalie be your starter, but he also played in the minors last season. That's rough. Saying all of that, they have the team, and they can get through just being with what they have with their team. They're the best defensemen in the NHL, and they have a couple of the best forwards in the NHL. I mean, that's all you need, really, if you're Colorado. So,
all right, Brett, any thoughts? Any rebuttal? Agree? Disagree?
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. I don't know. The Rangers are kind of they feel to me like a flip of the coin. All right, they got a pretty solid team, but yet they got a lot of holes that they still need to fill. I don't know if they're going to be able to do that, but I think they're a pretty decent team.
That's fair. That's fair.
Now,
Mike,
did you say the Rangers or did you say the Avalanche?
You said the Rangers.
Did I say the Rangers? Avalanche. See,
blue team. They got blue on their jerseys.
Mike, any thoughts on Colorado repeating?
Yeah, the last 19 Stanley Cups, I think 15 of them won with goalies they drafted. The point being that, elite players is what wins you Stanley Cups. You can win with mediocre goaltending, and Colorado has got a skill profile that, gosh, is as good as any team in the last 40 or 50 years. So I think they're in good shape still.
And just so you guys know, he follows draft picks and the success of draft picks in different rounds. We're going to have Mike on a whole different show so him and I can geek out a little bit.
Right.
All right.
Well,
okay.
There's not a lot of banter, so clearly everyone's just in agreement. It seems like it's going to be a smooth sailing season.
Okay. Okay, let's give Brent his question.
All right. Brent, do you believe that with the Chicago Blackhawks, Jonathan Toews and Patrick Kane will remain with the team till the end of the season, or will they be traded by the deadline, or maybe even earlier on?
Well, I think Kane's going to be going before the deadline. Ultimately, I think both guys are going to be going by the trade line this year. I don't see them. They're both in their final years of their contract. I don't see them. Taves was clearly not happy when DeBrincat and Kirby Dach got shipped out. He was not happy at all. He had shock and anger. And this is a quote from him. I'm not going to try, because he was asked now about if he's going to request a trade. And he said, I'm not going to try and hype up everything, but I'm not going to try to kill everything either. So that to me kind of tells me he's willing to go. He's probably going to move. When's it going to happen? Who knows? Taves is 34. Kane's 33. Kane's obviously the more valuable person between the two right now. Mm-hmm. And Kane's already, even last season, he was already rumored to be going to 3 other teams. So we'll see. I think Kane's going to go first and Taves will go second. And I think it's all going to happen before the trade deadline. No doubt about it.
Fair enough. So then, Evan, where do the Patrick Kane and or Taves end up? Is it for Kane? Let's start, and everyone can throw out their suggestions. Is it the New York Rangers? Is it the Edmonton Oilers? Is it Toronto Maple Leafs? Is it potentially Buffalo Sabres or somewhere completely random? Evan, first thoughts.
Looking for the package that they're going to want for him and who's willing to pay it and make a push and needs it for the fans. I look to the New York Rangers as the number one destination for Patrick Kane. I do not think Taves is going to leave. We're going to be concerned about what his health is going to be like again this year. But interesting note, there is it's one of those random things that people around the Edmonton Oilers know with Bob Stauffer and a bunch of them that have their discussions. But some people have talked about, would Taves consider that kind of move as opposed to Kane because of what he could bring for the playoff push? Because you don't need a number one line guy, but could you bring him in as your number 2 center and then you can move Draisaitl together, or you put him on the wing with either? So that could be a big conversation. Jordan,
do you agree?
My biggest question would be how much salary do they eat?
I think a third team is going to probably be involved, most likely to take on some of that.
50%. It'll be max. I think it's going to be 50%. That way, the Chicago is going to get a better draft pick, also an additional one, right?
Mike, thoughts?
Yeah, I think Brent nailed it. Chicago, well documented. They're in the Bedard sweepstakes hard. So I think getting rid of Kane well before the trade deadline will hasten that dive, as it were. So, yeah, I agree. They'll be getting rid of him sooner rather than later.
All right.
Okay,
I would disagree with everyone, because if you're trying to bring in Bedard, potentially, or Michkov, or whoever else is going to go, but if you're going for Bedard, who are you surrounding him with? You need veteran players. And so I don't know how keen maybe Kane is, because he hasn't really been vocal about leaving Buffalo or leaving Chicago after the rumors this year of him potentially being traded. Taves has been more keen and has said not only publicly but to management that he wants to leave. But really, I think one of those two guys will stay, maybe two, because you need veterans to play for your younger guys and teach them the game and show them the ropes. You're not going to put Connor Bedard to the Wolves. And, similar to what Edmonton was a couple of years ago, he wasn't really surrounded by top players, veteran players. There was Sean Horkoff and a few others, but it wasn't enough. And that can really expose a young player and a captain and maybe diminish his confidence. So I would think that maybe they'll stay, and then in the offseason they may go somewhere where they're competitive and they can potentially win one more cup.
Well, talking about cups and people who have none, why don't we move over to Mike and ask him this question? You ready, Mike?
I'm ready, buddy.
Okay, will the Kraken, that's the Seattle Kraken, actually score some goals this year? And if they do, who's going to score them?
Okay, so last year they scored 216, bottom 5, an atrocious power play. And going out the door, some nondescript guys, Yarncroc, Johansson, Blackwell, Gio, who's probably going to affect their PP a bit. But they lost about 40 goals out the door. But, it's interesting. They brought in Burakovsky, and you have to think he's good for 20, 25. Bjorkstrand, Probably good for 20, 25, maybe 30. But what I like about Seattle is, Beniers, the jury's out. Is he a shooter? I don't know. But based on sample size and his pedigree, he's going to distribute the puck really well. So I need, and I didn't even mention Shane Wright because I'm not sure what he's going to contribute as such a young guy. But I really think that they're good for increasing their goals by 30 this year. They'll still be in the bottom third of the league, but I think 250 over 3 goals a game is a safe bet, and maybe more. Obviously they need to get some luck, but I think and with what's his name, the QB and the PP, Vince Dunn, I think he's really stepping into his own. So I think they're in pretty good shape.
Fair points.
Okay,
I think the big one.
Yeah, go ahead, Bill.
I think the big focus is what they're going to do down the middle. If it is going to be Matty Beniers and Shane Wright and Yanni Gord if he's healthy, and I think he's out for the first little bit. So, and I know he wasn't like their top scorer in Tampa, but he's the depth scorer. He could put up at least 10 to 15 goals. So we'll see. Jordan, what are your thoughts?
I think Shane Wright's going back to junior, to be honest. I actually don't see him making the team. Like I think there's a spot there for him. He's going to be a really good player down the road for them. But I think they're too deep down the center right now, which is crazy to say with what they have. But you have Beniers, you have Gord, you have McCann. I mean, they have enough guys that can solidify that center core. And you have guys that can switch over from wing to the center position as well. So, I mean, I don't see him making the team, playing on the team. He might play those games to make up for the Gord mishap, I guess. But that would be it. Maybe 9 games.
So Jordan, do you think he's not going to make it just based on they want him playing top 6 minutes for sure, and he's not better than any? Or do you think this could be a matter of they don't want to be adding him in too early and they like to slow his development because he maybe lacks some development during the COVID period?
Yeah. One, this isn't Vegas. They're not going to trade him away. And 2, this isn't like they're not going to rush him. You have to realize who's running that team. It's Ron Francis, and he likes to build a team. He's old school, so he's gonna put this guy through development first off, and then make him work his way into the lineup and push his way into the lineup. They're not going to just throw him into the fire, especially Seattle being Seattle. Like, I think the Pacific Division's a really tough division this year. And what's the point on doing that? When you can give them way more playing time, you can get them to play at the Canadian Juniors. Like, it's just an easy option.
Cool. All right, let's move to our next question. What do we got?
Right, well, I'm up now, so...
Okay, well, let me ask you this question instead of you asking yourself.
I want to ask myself an easy one.
Actually, this is a question. It's interesting, everyone. I gave this question tonight to Favel just because I'm usually the one answering it. But after winning 2 Stanley Cups, while they did not three-peat as I predicted, they were a runner-up to the Stanley Cup against the Colorado Avalanche. Question for you, Favel, is can this be the year the Lightning will not be in the final 2? Could this be the year?
It's tough to say because I don't want to bet against Vasilevsky, and I think that's the biggest factor. I mean, he still is one of those goalies that can play 60-plus games in the season, and with his workload, I think he can handle it. The one question I have is the whole team dynamic and mileage. They've been to so many finals, won a few cups, and they also went to in 2015, and so it's a lot. Now, They do have some new bodies in there. They've gotten rid of a few others, but really their core and their top guys are still playing at really good levels. They're not that old. You still have Kucherov, Stamkos, Hedman, who's still probably one of the top 5, if not top 3 defensemen in the NHL. So you can compete. I'm just trying to think in the East who can really outplay them, and no goalie stands out other than Vasilevsky, right? Like Carolina can make a push maybe, but it's tough. And I honestly, the way John Cooper coaches that team and the dynamic, and I could see him going again to the final, and we could potentially have a repeat of this year, although it's very difficult barring injuries and things like that. So yeah, Vasilevsky's my wild card, but I wouldn't be surprised to see him at least in the top 4. After that, I don't know. I mean, they lost Ryan McDonough. That is going to be a big loss on the back end, but they may have someone to replace him. And I think they got Philip Myers for him, or one of the guys went in, but he's a young guy, so
Yeah.
it's going to take some time to develop. But I don't know. Brent, what are your thoughts?
As much as I want them to not be top four for like parity within the league, because it gets kind of old when one team just keeps. Remember, like the old Detroit years or whatever, and they just were always there. I mean, they're going to be top four, no doubt about it. I mean,
Conference
their
final
team
minimum. Okay.
Yeah, all right. Like they're definitely solid as you can be. They didn't really lose much, like as Favel said. I want them to not be top four, but they will be in the conference finals minimum.
Yeah, but will they be in the final, like Stanley Cup final again?
No.
Yeah.
Is this
okay?
Leafs year?
This is the Stanley Cup final. Oh, sorry, we didn't catch that. Say that again, Brent.
I said, is this the Leafs year? Because if you ask them, Tampa Bay is.
Okay. Speaking of the Leafs, no, joking. The Leafs are falling, and that means hockey regular season is back. If you're following with us right now, oh, by the way, I got to post this right now. So Howard says, kick the idiots out of chat, and I think they're talking about Pavel because he's bringing his friends on. He's saying bring his friends. So Howard, give Pavel a break. He's just trying to build the room. So I don't want to kick him off because he's also my guest and my co-host.
Sweet, I'm done early for the night. You guys can do this without me.
That's good.
See, we give everybody a channel to be able to communicate. Any other thoughts, guys? Anyone think that they're not making it? They don't have a chance to get in the final this year?
I don't think they're going to be in the final. I don't even think they're in the final four. So, yeah, I'm going bold on this one, but I don't think so. Yeah.
So, Jordan, you were on last year, right? Who did you predict in the Final Four last year? I'm just kind of wondering how your predictions went.
I had Colorado winning it.
Okay, that's fair.
I had Carolina against Colorado. And Carolina this year, I think, will make that next step.
Oh, you weren't one of the Minnesota guys. I think we had six.
No,
of us
that was Jim and Zylstra.
Yeah, Minnesota is an awful pick.
All right, let's move to round two. Let's move over then, Pavel, and get us started with our next questions in round two.
All right, Jordan, with the addition, because you were just chatting about the Carolina Hurricanes, with the addition of Brent Burns and Max Pacioretty, who unfortunately is out for a little bit, I think for like 4 months at least, I think torn Achilles. Will the Carolina Hurricanes be able to be better this season? Well, you just kind of pre-answered, but what are your thoughts on the team?
I'll start off with Patches. 2 good things and 1 bad thing. He's a previous 40 goal scorer, so you know that you can potentially get that. And with the lineup they have and the guys that they have, I don't see why not. Saying that, he's probably not going to do that this year, being injured as long as he is. But my other thing on him is he was a point-a-game player in the past 2 seasons. So point-a-game player, but he was injured. So injured both seasons. It's going to be out, I say, 6 to 8 months this season. That's almost a whole season. So that's a huge loss, but it's a good, it's almost like a trade deadline pickup when they go into the playoffs. So there's good and there's bad. There's more good than there is bad. On the Burns side, I think he offers a lot. I think they're going to miss that offensive side, taking out D'Angelo. But with Burns, you also get size as well. And size, obviously, is so important in the playoffs. So they have that. And you saw D'Angelo try and take on fights and try and pick fights with guys last season. And he was just so small. The guy's under 6 feet, I think. So where you have Burns 6'5", he can shoot the pill pretty good, right? So I think they're a better team. I think he'll provide just as much offense as D'Angelo and has more elements to his game. Yes, he's a little bit older and a little bit slower, but that's okay. They have speed up front, and they'll be able to take care of it on the back end. They still have a good defense. So,
Mike, do you agree?
Yeah, I love Burns this year. I think he's a sleeper fantasy guy, probably good for 75, 80 points.
Wow.
Being on the PP, he's such a smart player. And I think if Freddie Anderson rebounds, he could be, one of the top 3 goalies in the conference. So yeah, I agree. I'm picking Carolina to be in the Cup final, personally.
Wow.
Well, I've really enjoyed Seth Jarvis on that team. I think he's really emerged as a really strong top 6 guy, and I really liked how he played last season, including in the playoffs. But Brett, what are your thoughts on the Hurricanes?
Yeah, you know what? Both of those additions were awesome. It really just made them. I mean, they were already a really good team, and that just kind of bumped them up just a little bit more. Yeah, I think they're gonna do well this year.
I just wanted to add something else as well, that they're losing Domi and Trocheck down the center, and Trocheck is a huge loss. So a guy like Seth Jarvis is really going to have to step up this season.
Yeah.
But if he has a 50-point season, Trocheck had a 50-point season last year, I mean, you're kind of replacing it. So.
Well, sorry, go ahead, Pavel.
I was going to say, before Evan puts his thought, I think they're expecting Jesper Kotkaniemi to take a bigger step. I'm pronouncing it wrong, but I mean, they signed him to that, Kotkaniemi, because he's the one that they offer sheeted him, right? And I know it was, kind of a big thing to the Canadians, but, he's expected to be a second line center behind Aho. So, I mean, really, he needs to take that step, or, I mean, maybe he's just going to be a third line center. I don't know. What are your thoughts, Evan?
Yeah, so I actually think that Seth could probably get away with like a 40-point season this year, as long as he can play that same kind of hockey that Trocheck brought. Am I not the one, Pavel, that kind of rode you and everybody else? They're too light of a team.
Yes.
They've made those changes. They made those subtle changes. The rookies are a little bit older. The sophomores are a little bit older. And I like right now, I'm actually putting him in the Final Four as well. I think they're going to be finalists in the East for sure this year. I think there's going to be happy times for the Kane. What do they call them? The Canaanites or the Canaaniacs? Caniacs. That's it. Yeah, I follow a lot of them, and you see how crazy they are down there. You know what? I got to tell you, they are the best tailgaters probably in the NHL. I'd love to see the tailgating going back on down in Carolina again. So anyway, but okay, let's move over to Mike. Mike, we know you love the Boston Bruins. We're going to let you give them some love. You guys get ready to smash Mike right back with facts to tell him and trash talk his Bruins. But but just remember, he's going to bring analytics and stats and numbers and experience and the eye test in every argument. So let's talk about this. We're looking at the Bruins. Do you think they'll be able to return to the playoff picture, Mike, one more time before they break up some of that old boys club? One good solid run at least this year?
Wow. There's a lot of confirmation bias going on in this one. I went back and forth, and I finally landed on, I think there'll be a wild card team, but it'll be a lot tighter than last year. You guys will recall that, Washington finished 8th, but they were 16 points ahead of the Islanders. So the playoffs were set pretty much by January in the East. So negatives, McAvoy's out till December. Grzelcyk's out to early November. Marchand, although I've read that he's looking pretty good. Skating, probably late November. So they're going to have to suck it up for those first 15, 20 games. They're not getting any younger, we know, right? As I think, Evan, you must have worded this, the old boys club. And Jim Montgomery, he says he's not going to tweak the defensive side, but he wants to get the offensive side going. So new system. We know that Buffalo, Ottawa, Detroit, Jersey, they're coming, right? They're young teams, highly talented. So those are the negatives. The positives, Krejci's huge, especially for Pasta. Playing with Hall, they have great chemistry together. Pavel Zacha, I think, is a much better fit than Eric Halla was last year. I know Halla had 44 points. But Zacha, I mean, people don't know, but he had an apartment in Boston before. So he's lived there. His buddy, Jacob Zobrol, boyhood friend, has been living in his apartment. So it's not as if he's coming to Boston fresh. He knows the town.
Yeah.
Hampus Lindholm is obviously not new, but he only had 10 games. He'll make a big difference, especially in the first couple months with injuries. And here's the other thing. As much as those teams are coming, man, they have a lot of work to do. Those 4 teams I mentioned, they were 20 points out of the playoffs last year. So, they're coming, but they have a lot of work to do. And you never know. Pittsburgh, Washington, with some bad luck, they could completely drop out of the race as well, out of the wild card race. So I think the Bruins are in good shape as long as they don't get any injuries. To make a run, like everybody, they pick somebody up at the deadline, like they normally do. Be healthy heading into the playoffs, and they need career playoff runs from the elite players. Pasternak, Krejci, who's led the playoffs twice in scoring, and Swayman, obviously. If they can get that, then I'm optimistic.
Well, that's fair. And yes, I did call him the old boys club. Anyone else? Any quick thoughts there on his Bruins?
I feel like the Bruins every year, they're just kind of clawing and scratching to get by with all the injuries on their team. And they're without their number one defenseman till December. Like, I can't see them making the playoffs. I see them doing a huge dip at the start of the year and then maybe being like a bubble team at the end of the year and being on the outside because of the start. So
I was actually shocked that they fired Bruce Cassidy, given his history. I know that the room kind of, maybe a few of the younger players like Jake DeBrusk and that tension there may not have been good. My biggest question for Boston, which it was a bit of a head scratcher, was that 8x8, I believe it was, or 8x1.85 for Hampus Lindholm when they traded for him, because I was confused. Like, he's a good defenseman, but then he got injured quickly, and then can he live up to that expectation and that contract, especially with McAvoy out? And that's my big factor. Like, why get rid of a good coach, which we'll see how it affects Vegas, but yeah, and Hampus Lindholm. Those are my thoughts. Brett?
You know what? Evan, you're not wrong. They do have, I believe, 9 players that are over the age of 30 or 30 and over. So there is kind of that old boys club that's been kicking around, the Bergerons, right? Is their time near? Probably, right? Before things kind of, you got to change the whole new, fresh core of the team. That's coming. I think they're going to make the playoffs this year. I'm a Boston fan. Oh, I guess the other way. They're a good team, but yeah, I mean, everybody's right. Like, injuries, that's your biggest concern with Boston.
Wow.
And I think maybe people can comment on it. Like, is it going to be 5-3 from the Atlantic and the Metro, or is it going to be 4-4? Because I really only have a shoe-in for 3 teams in the Atlantic, because really it could be a toss-up between them and Ottawa, Boston and Ottawa. But in the Metro, it's a dogfight. Apart from Carolina, it's anybody's game. But Jordan, thoughts?
Ottawa, young, fast, no injuries. I mean, I do think the age thing will hit them, and with age comes injury as well. So, yeah, that's my thought.
Did you say Ottawa?
Yeah.
Or did you say Boston?
Ottawa, young and fast.
Comparing.
Sorry. I thought. Yeah, I gotcha. No, I heard your question.
The Metro. Yeah.
I know. I heard the question, but I thought Jordan was referring to Ottawa being old.
I mean, Ottawa was injured last year, and that hindered a lot of their progress. So they had a tough start, and I think COVID went through them, and there was some other stuff. But the thing with Ottawa is, I think there's maybe we're just as an aside, I think there's a little bit too much overhype with Ottawa. I don't think they're that good. Yeah, they got a couple of extra key guys like Giroux and DeBrincat, but I don't think they're playoff ready. Like, no offense, but I don't know. You guys can disagree.
It'll be one of the bubble, I think.
Fair. Well, let's get over to the question that we have on the Senators then here, Favel.
All right, then. Are they ready to take the next step, Evan? And if so...
Evan? No, this isn't my question. This is the question for Brent.
For Brett. Sorry. Are the Sens ready to take the next step in the playoffs? And what can we expect this year, as I just kind of alluded to?
Yeah, well, I mean, kind of just... That was a nice segue into this. Yeah, they had challenges last year. But honestly, I'm a Giroux fan. Between Giroux, DeBrincat, and adding Cam Talbot as the netminder, I think that was a solid move. Talbot's been like he's not a superstar goaltender, but he's a solid, reliable rock. that teams have been using, and I think that was a great pickup. It's going to be interesting here to see kind of how it plays out, but no doubt in my mind, Ottawa is going to make at least the first round. It's got to be. I mean, the moves that they made, and they got the young kids, they got the Brady Kachucks of the world, the Stussels, like they got a solid core, and they added some pretty solid additions. I mean, DeBrincat's younger, but Giroux leading the way, like they got that's massive for a team like Ottawa that kind of needed a little bit of leadership push. Brady Tkachuk's the captain, but is he? I mean, like everybody learns. The McDavids, the Crosbys, like everybody, every good solid captain learns from somebody that's been a veteran, and I think Claude Giroux going to Ottawa is going to make a massive difference, and they will claw in and make it into at least the first round.
So just an interesting note, if they make it in, are they not in the same division as Toronto? And Toronto will probably win that division, which means that'll be their first round opponent?
Yeah. So Ottawa, if you really want to make it to the second round, you make sure you get Toronto in the first round. It's an automatic gimme.
Oh, boy. Okay, Toronto fans, if you got a problem with Brent, what he's saying, go ahead and comment. I'll post it right here on here, and you can boo him out of the room. Anyone else got a thought on that, on the Sens?
I think if Chabot is healthy this year, which is a big if, I think he could be a Norris candidate with that group coming to Ottawa.
Yeah, and it's looking like Sanderson's going to be playing this year, right? So there's a question. I'm not familiar with the left and right D. Is Sanderson same side as Chabot, or is he opposite?
Yeah. They have Brandstrom on the left as well.
Okay.
And Artem Zub, I think, plays on the left side.
Okay, fair. All right. Okay, you can ask me my question.
All right. Mr. Evan, will Matvei Michkov be selected in the top 3 in the upcoming 2023 NHL draft? And when would he be able to play in the NHL?
Okay, well, I'm so glad. Great question that I gave you. Oh, boy. You can't fake it sometimes on these shows at all.
Softball.
Okay, I did this as a means for me to take a moment and get our focus off of the NHL, and let's talk about maybe the draft coming up, at least connecting to the NHL. There's a lot going on over in the KHL right now. I just want to remind people, in about 3 weeks, 3 weeks time, we have Carl Manson, who is the editor for Hockey News Sweden, and he's a political analyst, and he follows all post-Soviet hockey. So he's going to be coming on the show talking to us about a lot of this stuff. This is an interesting. We know the goalie, 6'8", Fedotov, who had all these issues and things with the Army. Was he sick? Was he not? There is crap happening over right now in Russia. I can tell you right now, Carl Manson is actually worried over there that there is an agenda, and Putin is using the KHL as a propaganda machine. That's going on. So he's going to have some interesting takes if you really want to talk crap about the KHL. Is what it sounds like, at least. But because of what I'm hearing, he would have been a number 2 lock to go number 2. If they knew they could have got him over, he could challenge for Connor Bedard. He is injured right now. He got injured in early August, and so he is out for a couple months. He won't be in, it looks like, till like mid-November, end of November. But I think that just like Shane Wright fell last year because of circumstances, I think Mishkov's going to fall, because I think people are worried there's going to be at least a 2-year wait before they can even get them. So some team's going to have a really good shot, I think, at an incredible player, but I think he will get here, but he's not going to get here till this whole, the whole war issue is actually finished. I think because he signed right now, I think he signed this last year 4 years with the KHL team, 3 or 4. Someone can correct me if I'm wrong. So that's my take.
I don't think that he may fall, or he would fall similar to Shane Wright, because I think Shane Wright fell due to the circumstances of what each team wanted. And the Montreal Canadiens, after picking up Kirby Dach, kind of wanted a winger rather than a center. There has been rumblings of his off-ice attitude. And now whether that's true or not or substantiated is hard to say. I mean, players grow in. He's 18, so it's going to take some time. But I think Michkov can still drop, but it's going to be a very stacked draft, similar to the 2015 draft. But I could be wrong. Yeah. Brett, what are your thoughts?
I don't know. The kid's awesome, but like you said, he's stuck there. And is he stuck there? Nobody really knows things that are happening over there. It's kind of out of the NHL's or even our control. I don't know. I'd like to see him here. I don't know if I would say he would go number 1 over Bedard, but he'd definitely go 2. And he's definitely worth waiting for, 100%.
Jordan?
I think you guys are absolutely crazy, like messed in the head if you don't think he's going to go 2nd overall. I think for sure he's a lock to go 2nd overall. If you have the chance to draft a franchise player to play in your top 6 and be the guy, you're going to draft him any day of the week. A lot of the teams that you have to think about that are going to be drafting aren't going to be good for a couple years. So as much as there's that contract over there, you can just leave them over there, let them play with men and let them develop and become that franchise player. So it's a win-win, really. Like, you just draft them.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Mike, thoughts?
Yeah, I think there's certain organizations that, have deeper drafting organization, I guess you will. Like, think of the Red Wings in the 80s, right? Some of the players they got out of the East Bloc. I think there's some organizations that are pretty plugged in and know what they're dealing with, and enough of them that the demand for this guy will go up. So, yeah, I think 2 overall is completely within reason.
So, in all fairness, next week we have Willie Palov on, by the way, writes for the Red Line, contributing Red Line Report. He follows the Halifax Mooseheads. Let's ask him if he has any insight on the Shane Wright. The reason is I've heard that same thing, and I feel it's coming from media, and most of the scouts that I've had conversations with, they're saying that Shane Wright, he was an incredible player on that ice, and that it had nothing to do with that, and it has everything to do with analytics now. And they thought I'm stated when this draft happened, Montreal blew it. He is not a number 1 draft pick. And I think that they're going to be sorry with who they picked, and that I think Wright is ready. I actually would think different for Seattle. I think he could make it this year. But why rush him right now when they are in the Connor Bedard sweepstakes anyway? Because Seattle, now this is what I'm thinking. Mike, you got me thinking when you said about some organizations. If it's Arizona, they're going to wait. If it's Seattle, they're going to wait. If it's Ottawa, for some reason, they're not going to wait. If it's, and one of those other teams that's had Philadelphia, are they going to wait? They've already had issues with Russia. And their fans are demanding. I think there's some places it's not going to work. So it's going to depend who's in that number 2 spot, whether Michkov even is there. It's really weird how I think we're going to find a lot of weird drafting now in the years ahead, because they're not, unless it's like a Connor Bedard, they're not just taking them anymore. They're second guessing. So, all right, guys. Hey, it's been great. Let's move over. We're going to move a little bit quicker here through our Hockey Octagon Challenge. We're going to give you a countdown on some questions. Pavel, you and I, what we'll do is we'll fill ourselves in where Jim was supposed to be here. Why don't we do that here today? So, and I'll start off with you in the first one. But our first one is you have 1 minute each. I'm going to have my counter on so that I can actually make sure you guys actually stay on topic here. You guys ready? Now, I'm going to start with Jordan and Brent. Your question is, who is your pick to be a bust this year in the NHL? They don't have to be new. They could be a current player, but this is the year that they go down. So who's your bust pick? We'll start with Brent. You got 1 minute. You're on.
Easy. Jesse Puljujärvi from the Edmonton Oilers. 4th round pick, or fourth overall pick. He's been a dud. He's big body, big man, decent skill. but he's just straight up a dud. It sucks, but it is what it is. I had high hopes for him. If Seattle messes around with Shane Wright, he's fragile now after dropping to 4. Do not send him down. You're going to crack him. He's going to become fragile, and he's going to turn into a bust. So, yes, it will. Shane Wright.
So the Kraken could crack him.
That's right. That's right.
All right, you did that in 45 seconds. We're going to move over now. Let's set it up. Jordan, you're on. Who's yours?
I got potentially 2. I got Tage Thompson out of Buffalo. I think that he's just overpaid. I don't think that he's as good as people say he is. I know that's a little bit of a bold one, but I think he's maybe not going to get as much playing time because of a lot of the prospects that are coming up and a lot of the guys that will run a power play. All he has is a shot. So I don't think he's a guy that can even run a power play. So that's fine. But my other one is maybe Robert Thomas out of St. Louis. I know it's another bold one, but one good season, once again, same as Tage Thompson. How do you think that works? Like that?
Wow.
Usually when one good season, it's boom or bust. So you're going to get a really good player. You're not. They also signed Kyrou to the same deal. I think Kyrou has a little bit more upside. So that's just my thought.
Hey, 50 seconds. Good job. Now, hey, guys. So and that's interesting because I actually think both Tage and who was the other Thomas? I thought massive overpay. So when you say bust, not that they're going to be a bust for what their contract is essentially.
Yes,
then.
Exactly. Fair. I think Tage Thompson is still a 50-point player, which isn't bad, but I think his goals is going to go way down. He's going to be maybe like a 25. Like I don't think he hits 30.
Wow.
Yeah.
So guys, so tonight we had one of our guests that didn't make it on. He has written on Post-Soviet Hockey. He's been one of our guests, Patrick Conroy. He's in right now following. He's not feeling well tonight. So he's just commented on Mishkov. Let's get some insight from him here, guys. Look what he's written. So Patrick, thanks for writing this. He says, Mishkov is signed through 2026 with SKA, but I'm also of the opinion that he'll fall a little bit in the draft, although not very far. So I guess our question is, do you see him falling below 2, though? Because Jordan is feeling like he will not go below 2. So when you say fall, what's your thoughts then, Patrick? All right. And while I'm waiting on that, hey, thanks, Richard. Richard comes on. He says, I don't know who any of these players are, but I like the dudes in the talk.
Thanks, Richard. You're a real one.
So, Richard, just so you know, our buddy Jordan here wants to know, do you have a beard? That's his big talk, so you can follow him in the comments.
We want to know if Richard plays bass guitar.
What, are you starting a 2-guys band, or what's going on?
Well, we already got a bassist.
All right, guys, let's go to our next one. So this was supposed to be for Jim and Mike. Favel, we're going to make you step in on this one. So you're going to get to pick this and had no chance to prepare. All right, so we'll start with Mike first. Who is your sleeper pick if you were doing NHL fantasy drafts? Mike, you're up.
Okay, so shout out to the Fantasy and Ice guys at NHL.com. So there's 2 people, 2 players. Number 2, my second, is Jack Quinn. He's ranked 250th out of 250 players. They figure he'll get 44 points. I think he's good for 60 or 65. My number 1, and I've been reading about him. He's training hard. His work in the weight room is as good as it's ever been. He's been doing speed work over the summer. Yeah. He's ranked 206 at 51 points. Tyler Seguin. I no doubt in my mind that if he's back to even 90% of what he was, and they figure he was 70% last year, that he's good for 70 points. So that's a pretty good premium above 51. So those are my 2 guys.
All right. That's 52 seconds, man. Not too bad. So I saw your competitor here for Hockey Supremacy, Favel, the cat, our insider here, because he knows absolutely nothing about hockey, so he pretends he's the insider. Let's hear what kind of inside information he has as he's frantically trying to come up with an answer here today. Go ahead.
I've got 2 that I think that can really make an impact.
You're on the go.
All right, Ilya Samsonov out in Toronto. I know that people harp on goaltending, but you can't tell me that both goalies are going to have a shitty time. He's 25 years old. He was a first-round pick, and I think he did well in Washington. I think he just wasn't given the opportunity to play, albeit Washington has a better defense than Toronto. But I think he can bounce back and have a solid season if he's only required to play 40 to 45 games, no more than 50. If he plays more, and if Matt Murray's injured longer, they're going to be hooped. My other one is a secret one on the other side, and it's Dylan Strome. After that deep draft and being signed for a one-year deal with the Washington Capitals and Nicholas Backstrom out as their number one center, he's going to have to step into that either first, most likely second position. And I think he can secretly have a 60-point season, at least for that team, because they have some great wingers there in Washington. Boom.
Wow, 57 seconds. Talk about taking it right to the edge. Boom. So the insider comes up with some inside information for you guys. So if you're making your picks, these guys, I think these are some good players that you can look at with this. So, all right, let's go to our next round. I'm going to skip over here. We're going to run with Mike and Jordan. All right. So Mike and Jordan, which player has the best rookie season? Let's start with Jordan. Go.
It could be a mix of three different guys. Jack Quinn, if he makes the team, and I think he will. He was an over a point game in the minor, or playing in the minors last season. And Alex Holtz, potentially, if he makes the team as well, is going to play with Jack Hughes, and that's going to be nasty. Like, he's going to get some points there. But my number one guy is just an easy one, is Matty Beniers. I just don't see how he loses that spot, to be honest. He's going to get playing, like, the best amount of playing time for sure. Will be their top line center, play in every situation. Yeah, he's the guy.
I love how Jordan is to the point. 33 seconds, mic drop. That's it. Matty Beniers. And he teased us with some of the other players, right?
Of course.
All right. All right. Let's hear which player is going to have the best rookie season. Mike, you're on. Go.
So I think Owen Power is the everyone's choice, but it's been 60 years since the defenseman's won the Calder 2 years in a row. Mason McTavish, we all know about. Beniers, I agree with Jordan. Marco Rossi, I think he's a sleeper. But Jack Quinn, I love Jack Quinn. And incidentally, he's only 4 days older than Marco Rossi. But those two guys have been seasoned in the minors. And I really think Jack Quinn has that look of a guy that's going to step up. My dark horse, though, is Logan Thompson in Vegas. 25-year-old goalie. He's going to step into an opportunity. And if he wins 30 games, he probably wins a Calder. And honorable mention, how about Dallas with Wyatt Johnson, Maverick Bourque, and Stan Coven in camp? How impressive is that? So I'm really excited about the young talent this year. It's going to be fun.
Those are some good calls. And talking about Thompson, that is a great point, because if he's the guy you run with, and they make the playoffs. I mean, yeah, exactly, for a guy under so much pressure. I must say, my Revs top 15, Maverick Bourque was in my top 15. Go back, take a look, guys. That guy is a player, even though many people didn't expect that.
Sorry, Mike, you were saying there wasn't a defenseman that's won in the past
back-to-back
years? Didn't Mo Seider win last year?
Yeah, so back-to-back. So Owen Power won last year, but it was like back in like 1960-something where two defensemen won back-to-back. Or not Owen Power last year, Moritz Seider.
Yeah. So it was the back-to-back piece that we had there.
Yeah.
All right. Let's go over who we got to get Brent in here. Brent, which player? So this was supposed to be Jim. So Favel, you're going to jump in on this one too. Which player or players are going to crack the 50-goal mark this year?
Well, I mean, we already know Matthews, Draisaitl. I'm going to guess Ovechkin because he had 50 last year. He's probably going to do it again. Maybe not. Maybe he's only going to be a 45 guy this year. But one guy I particularly am keeping an eye on is Kirill Kaprizov out of Minnesota. That kid's a stud. And he's just starting. Like, he's brand new in the league still. He won the Calder. He's poised. Like, I think he had 46 goals last year. He's ready to rip, man. He's that's my guy that I think is going to be in the top three with Draisaitl and Matthews. Yeah, I expect more. There was only 4 last year that ended up being 50 more. But yeah, I think he's gonna really light her up this year and become a premier goal scorer. And on top of that, I think Draisaitl is going to win the Rocket this year.
Whoa, that I get, man. Okay, all right, guys. So we got you heard it from Brent here. Now we are ready, Pavel. Who's going to crack the 50 goal mark this year?
Well, Brent kind of alluded to the common three that are up there. Some of the sleepers that I'm wondering about. Well, first off, I don't know if Kreider will repeat. I mean, a lot of his goals were on the power play. I could see him maybe getting 35 to 40 with the Rangers because I think he cracked 50 last year as well, or just under. He was 46 or something. You guys can correct me if I'm wrong. The two that I think are interesting are Kevin Fiala, who's now moved to LA because he's got that big contract, and I think he can really play and put up points. And I think he'd be a surprise, like he's playing with better centers, right? You got Anze Kopitar, right? Not to say that Nashville didn't have solid depth, but it's, Matt Duchene and Ryan Johansson, they're not the best elite centers. The other two that I'm thinking of,
Minnesota, you mean?
Pardon? Minnesota.
Kevin Fiala was on Minnesota.
Sorry, Minnesota. Yeah, sorry. See, I don't even know nothing about
Insider, man, insider.
This is why I know nothing about it.
Okay, your time's up because he interrupted you. All right, sounds good, guys. All right, so these are our last two questions before we head off. Pavel and I were going to do a wrap up, but I think we're all going to just end right here in a moment. Okay, so I have a question right now. First GM to be fired in the 21-22 season. Mike, you're up.
Chuck Fletcher, without a doubt. He's done nothing in the last couple off seasons. They brought in D'Angelo, and that should be enough to win the Bedard sweepstakes. But no, then he had to hire Tortorella, who's probably going to motivate that team just enough to lose out on the sweepstakes. And just to rub salt in the wound, Couturier is probably done for the year because of his back. So I think, Daniel Briere was brought on as a special assistant. And I think Comcast, I think that runs Philadelphia, David Scott, the CEO, is breathing down Fletcher's neck. And I think he's the first to go.
Wow. Okay. Mic drop for Mike. All right, Brent. Let's match that, man. The first GM to be fired, 21-22 season. What you got? Go.
I agree wholeheartedly with that. Chuck Fletcher is the guy that's on the hot seat. If nobody gets fired throughout the season and the Leafs lose the first round, Kyle Dubas is gone.
He won't be re-signed. Yeah.
Thinking he was going to get fired by like halfway through. It all depends on their regular season, but typically the Leafs are good during the regular season and they just fail in the playoffs. So is Kyle Dubas going to be first fired? No, Chuck Fletcher is, but Kyle's definitely on the hot seat as well if they don't produce with what they have.
Okay, fair. All right, Jordan, we're going to let you go this alone. We want you to tell us the first coach to be fired in the 2021 season.
First coach, it's going to be tough. I actually watched another podcast to kind of get all the coaches down for this one, what their time was with the team, because that's a big one, because coaches usually only last for like 3 to 4 years tops as it is. So a couple of the guys that I have is just depending on how the season goes. So Anaheim, I don't think they're going to be that good. So I do see a Dallas Eakin getting fired. He's been there since 2019. So right at that 3-year mark, I mean, that's probably the easy one. DJ Smith, if Ottawa doesn't do well, then I think he'll be fired. Same thing with Washington. If Washington does not do well, Laviolette's been there for 2 years. I don't think they'll keep him. Pittsburgh, say they flop out on the playoffs. I think Mike Sullivan's been there since 2015. He would be fired. And then another easy one I have is Lindy Ruff with the Devils, because I don't think the Devils are just quite ready for the playoffs yet. And unfortunately, because they don't make the playoffs, he will be fired.
Wow. And I don't know what everyone else thinks, man. I think Lindy Ruff's, he's the one that got the most to worry about right now. Jack and the others have been behind him on the podcast and sharing stuff all throughout. But I worry about Lindy Ruff because the Devils fans aren't going to hold on much longer. It's time to kind of break through on that. So, well, guys, man. So go ahead.
I also want to say that I think Kevin Cheveldayoff out in Winnipeg is also on the hot seat because I don't know what Winnipeg is doing and stripping Wheeler of the Sea, bringing not really doing anything in the off season. Like they barely changed the roster. Was Shifley supposed to be traded? So I think he, next to Fletcher, is probably on the hot seat to being fired midway through.
That's fair, eh?
Yeah.
Fair. By the way, guys, just letting you know, every Wednesday night, 7 p.m. right here. Keep your stick on the ice by joining us live, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. You can find us on the Sports Empire as well. So just wanting to put a shout out there for everything. All right, so our buddy Patrick got back. This is what his take was. He still got Mishkov in the top 5-6 because he is so good and the NHL is so business-driven. They'll stay in touch with SKA, whatever the geopolitical situation. So, Patrick, this will be interesting. We're going to ask this to a couple other folks too, especially Carl Manson, who follows a lot of what's going on in the KHL. I just think that this is an unusual year, and it's going to depend on the team. The truth is, if it's Arizona, they'll wait. They won't care. Yeah. They do anything that they feel like. So
you also have to look at the situation in Minnesota with Kirill Kaprizov, and there was rumors about his visa, and somehow the Minnesota Wild organization did whatever they could to get him there for what he brings to that organization and his values. So they made it work. I think they would make this work as well.
Exactly. Well, guys, hey, thanks, Jordan, Mike, Brent. It's been awesome having you guys on. I want to remind everyone next week, Willie Palov, he is a contributor for the Red Line Report. Scouts writes over for the Halifax Mooseheads. We're going to ask him questions. He's followed Uyghur. He's followed Jonathan Drouin and, of course, the great Nathan McKinnon, who just signed the beauty contract to become even a more expensive player than Connor McDavid. There's a discussion, guys, for another roundtable. Any last thoughts there, Pavel?
Nope. Thanks for all our guests for coming on and sharing their thoughts and for telling me how wrong I am and know nothing about hockey.
All right. In the meantime and in between time,
keep your sticks on the ice. Stay safe, everyone. Take care, guys.
Take care, guys. Cheers.